Well, Shabbat Shalom and happy Thanksgiving. I hope those of you who celebrated had a meaningful holiday. I want to dedicate this drash to our Tikkun Olam committee, most especially Susan Kaufman, Marlene Yokel, Lori Villi, Deb Halprin, and Rebecca Weissman. And of course, the extraordinary rabbi sitting behind me, Rabbi Amy Ehrlich, all of whom were instrumental in organizing our Tikkun Olam Thanksgiving dinner. And I also want to lift up those who participate in our Sunday lunch program as well. When my son and I arrived at Emanu-El this past Sunday for the Tikkun Olam Thanksgiving dinner, we made our way to Wise Hall and immediately donned our uniforms. Name tag, check. Apron, check. Gloves, check. The two of us, along with some 100 volunteers, including many who are here tonight, rolled up their sleeves to serve a hot, delicious Thanksgiving meal to 225 guests of honor. Among these guests were seniors, women from local domestic violence shelters, and families facing the challenges of homelessness. As the first guests began to stream in, we quickly took our designated places. The room filled up in what felt like an instant, and suddenly dinner service had begun. Some volunteers raced to fill champagne flutes with sparkling cider, others to retrieve coffee and tea for the undercaffeinated. There were cartons of cranberry sauce to distribute, one per person, and cheese slices, mountains and mountains of cheese slices to distribute as well. Huge rolling carts carrying generous portions of turkey and stuffing, carrots and potatoes came out of the kitchen next, and it was a veritable sprint as we all ran to pick up a tray. Once we landed at each table, food in hand, we began to solicit requests from our guests. And who would like some carrots here? Anyone here care for stuffing? How about some seconds of the mashed potatoes? The buzz in the room was electric as volunteers took and filled orders, scooped and plunked food onto plates, and zipped back and forth across Wise Hall to ensure that our guests had every condiment, every utensil, and every morsel that they needed or wanted. Many of our cherished Thanksgiving patrons live exceedingly difficult lives, the details of which we know very little. But we do know that a good number of them contend with severe poverty, food or housing insecurity, loneliness, and isolation. This single meal offers our guests a small but critical measure of respite and relief from the more challenging realities of their lives. For 2 hours, just 2 hours, they can experience abundance instead of scarcity, joy instead of anxiety, and ease instead of fear. They can breathe, they can relax, and they can smile even for just a single moment in time. Some might wonder, can one meal really make a difference in someone's life? Our Torah portion this week, Parshat Toldot, would argue that yes, it most certainly can. Here we read the story of Jacob selling his bowl of red lentils to his twin brother Esau. The cost? Esau's birthright, or the claim to their father Isaac's inheritance. The story unfolds as follows. Once, when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the open fields, famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Give me some of that red stuff to gulp down, for I am famished." Jacob said, "First, sell me your birthright." And Esau said, "I am at the point of death, so what use is my birthright anyway?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away. No matter what one might think about Esau's decision here, and most of our commentators deride it as impulsive, short-sighted, and indicative of Esau's primitive tendencies, the facts of the story remain the same. Esau is willing to sacrifice his firstborn privileges and alter his position in the family in order to simply eat this one meal. For Esau, this meal of stewed lentils is worth more than any status or honor or advantage conferred upon him by his birth. It's worth more than money. It's worth more than land. And it's worth more than riches. At this moment, whether one calls it rash or reckless or wise, the bowl of lentils is priceless, and its worth to Esau is beyond measure. Regardless of how we might evaluate this choice, Esau's decision to trade his birthright for a bowl of lentils urges us to pause and consider the importance of this meal, and more broadly, all meals. This meal forever changed Esau and Jacob's relationship, standing, and position in their family, and it forever changed their trajectories in life. For Esau, it's unclear whether he sought this change or whether he was misled into it. But the truth is, maybe he didn't want the birthright and all the responsibilities and expectations and burdens associated with it. Maybe he didn't want to be the presumed leader of his generation. We'll never know. We can only conjecture. But whatever one thinks about the birthright and Esau's feelings regarding it, there is no doubting the lever that triggered its loss: this meal. What we learn is there is power in food, in this case, a power that was misused, and that one single meal, even one as unassuming as a bowl of lentils, can completely transform a life. Years ago, New York Times columnist David Brooks wrote about a family in Washington, D.C., who hosted a weekly Thursday night dinner for teens and young adults in the neighborhood. He called the column "The Power of a Dinner Table." And he wrote, "When you go to dinner at Kathy and David's house on Thursday night, there might be 15 to 20 teenagers crammed around the table. The kids who show up have endured the ordeals of modern poverty, homelessness, hunger, abuse, sexual assault. Almost all have seen death firsthand to a sibling, friend, or parent. Many of these kids were utterly lost before coming to the Thursday dinner. But this meal, this gathering of love and community and stability, it helped these kids get back on track. And at the time of publication, 4 kids had even started college, and 1 had joined City Year, the national service organization. The power of a meal, indeed. After all the leftover turkey and stuffing, mashed potatoes and carrots had been distributed in to-go containers, a feat that necessitated a huge assembly line of volunteers and several runners going back and forth, we began the process of cleaning up the Tikkun Olam Thanksgiving and saying goodbye to our guests. Amid the flurries of thank yous and farewells, one of our guests shared that this was the greatest meal of her life, and she was so happy to be included. The greatest meal of her life. Is there any compliment more precious or wonderful than this? This woman's words were echoed in the gratitude expressed by many of our guests who shared how much they appreciated the food, the ambiance, the volunteers, the take-home gifts, and the ability to simply enjoy a leisurely meal. Some said they loved how we treated them, how we spoke to them, how we diligently took their orders, and how we tried our best to fill them. Others shared how nice it was to have fresh food provided for the next several days. Our guests felt welcome and cared for, respected and loved. They felt a sense of dignity and belonging, safety and kinship. What a gift to nurture a community of people who don't receive such nurturing. And what a blessing to witness the resulting joy and confidence that blossoms. This too is the power of one meal. The power of one meal impacts those who receive it, but also those who prepare it and serve it. For all who participated on Sunday, there is power in the mitzvah of sharing our bread with the spiritually and physically hungry and bringing the homeless into our home. There is power in giving of ourselves, in tending to our neighbors, and in strengthening the bonds of friendship between us and the members of our greater New York community. There is power in serving and greeting and offering the gifts of our hearts. And there is power in opening our spiritual home to those in need and helping those who might have entered as strangers leave as friends. I hope many of you felt this power yesterday. Maybe you felt it in the warmth emanating around the Thanksgiving table. Maybe you felt it in the love filling the room. Maybe you felt it as you ate that first delicious bite of your Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe you felt it in surveying the room as you recognized these are the faces I care most about. Maybe you felt it in the breath you took after the holiday ended, realizing your heart was as full as your stomach. In this season of Thanksgiving, may we do our very best to remember the power of one meal, whether it's a bowl of lentils or a multi-course Thanksgiving dinner, whether it's served on fancy linens or around a cramped kitchen table, whether it's elegant and grand or casual and simple. May we remember this every time we sit down with our beloved ones and every time we're invited to another person's table. May we remember it as we go to the grocery store or coffee shop, and may we remember it as we stop for dinner ever so casually on a weekday. May we remember the power of one meal as we approach the December holidays too, knowing there will be many who are alone or unable to celebrate. And may we remember the power as we walk the streets of our city during these days, knowing there are so many around us who are ever so hungry for food, for community, and for connection. On this Shabbat and always, may we do all we can to respond to the hunger so present among us, always remembering if one meal can transform a life, many can transform the world. Kenny Hiratzon. May it be so.